Natalie Allport to the Athletes Podcast for the 42nd episode. Natalie, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Natalie and what she does, what she's been doing as a former Team Canada athlete. Now you've got a million things on the go between 93 agency, between your own social media platforms. Tell us a bit about how you came to be who you are today.
Yeah. So I grew up playing like every sport and then found snowboarding and kind of never looked back. I gave up hockey for snowboarding, which was probably a toughest decision of my childhood, and kind of against my parents' wishes because, you know, hockey has a clear route to NCAA. There's obviously the national hockey team. And at the time, snowboarding wasn't even in the Olympics yet. So it chose that route. Snowboarding did get into the Olympics. Unfortunately, fell just short in 2014, but I spent 4 years on the national team. Had a ton of injuries. It's just kind of part of the game, no matter how strong you are, how fit you are. When it comes to snowboarding and extreme sports, that's just going to happen. And I had all these other passions on the go, and so I called it quits, which I like to say retired because it sounds much better, in 2015. And I had already started my business, was finishing up my business degree. And so I started a social media marketing agency, and now I've just been, I compete in CrossFit a little bit, so I'm still really into competing on the athlete side and connecting with athletes as well as like fitness and all those things. So I still share a lot of that stuff on my social media platforms, as well as marketing advice for athletes and coaches and things like that. And then my marketing agency, works directly with businesses and entrepreneurs and athletes and things for social media and marketing. And so that's what I do. And then over this quarantine, I've really ramped up the content creation, which has been really awesome and fun to get back to, because when I was a kid, I would film myself snowboarding in the backyard, film skateboarding, make like videos all the time. And so getting back to that has been really fun. And just trying to do some more series on all my social media platforms, on my YouTube, and try to help motivate, inspire people, and do sports content from the female perspective as well, which I think is important and there's not that much of.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to touch on there, but it's really cool to bring you on because you've got, with your podcast, the All In Project, and what you're doing through that platform. I saw your biography, and I saw what you were about, what you were doing, and it was amazing to me because it kind of is very similar to what we're doing here with the Athletes Podcast and showcasing, interacting with athletes. You've got this new series now where you're putting out the workouts that you're doing to try and train like ex-athlete. Your example, this one coming out this week is training like Juju Smith-Schuster. That'll be a heck of a fun video. I'm excited to see that come out. But what started, or what was the inspiration for you to, I'm understanding that injuries played a factor, but was there a point in time where you decided, you know what, I can't keep putting my body through this, instead of, because there's a lot of athletes and there's a lot of stories out there of athletes who have tried to continue to go back to their sport despite not being able to still physically do that. And what was that turning point for you to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to put the snowboard down and start doing the stuff that I really love to do and save my body?
Yeah, I think one thing is, like, since I was a kid, I had this dream of going to the Olympics and being a pro athlete. But when my parents would ask me, okay, like, what's your backup plan? I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Like, I'm just going to do something else with that. So I had like these two different goals, which I think was really beneficial because I had a place to put my energy when I was done. Like, I did have a path. As hard as that whole decision was and that whole year was, I still did have this kind of path and projection of where I wanted to go. But yeah, making that decision is really difficult. Like I would look back through my journals of previous seasons and try to see, was there any signs that I wanted to retire? What am I doing? And so one thing that was difficult for me is snowboarding is very much a skill-based sport. And I'm very much of like a hard work pays off type person. Like in hockey, you put in all that work in the off season on the ice, you're in before everyone, you're out before everyone. It's going to make you better. But in snowboarding, that's not necessarily the case. I would train my ass off, especially being that I come from somewhere that there's not huge mountains. I didn't have necessarily all the funds to go to all these big competitions and all these training camps that my competitors could and my teammates could. So I was like, I'm just going to work so hard and that'll make me unbeatable. But unfortunately, like snowboarding, that's just not the way it works. I was super strong and well conditioned, but you can just fall and break your ribs or get a concussion or different things, or someone just learns this trick faster just because it just clicks like that. And so that there was always that disconnect with me in snowboarding. And in my last season, I ended up finding CrossFit, which I really enjoyed. I'd always really enjoyed being in the gym. I always enjoyed playing all the different sports, and then I'd already kind of started my business and everything. So as the feelings started coming and I got these injuries and I started seeing some of my teammates get really, really bad injuries, and kind of that like kind of shocked me into rethinking everything. And I was thinking, I can try to push for 2018 and make that Olympic dream happen, but that's also delaying my other goals that I've suddenly had. Like I want to get more into CrossFit. I want to start my business. In 2018, I would be older. And so do I want to put behind my business goals and keep sacrificing for this one goal? And yeah, I was really lucky that I had these other passions to go to and that I had other sports to outlet to. But it was definitely a big decision because my whole life had been kind of that whole goal was going to the Olympics and doing that sport. And all of a sudden it was like, you're quitting when you're already almost there. And that was really, really tough. I'm lucky that my body is still okay. But I think also in snowboarding mentally, I was watching the F1 documentary on Netflix. And one of the racers was talking about, because I know he was going through one of the racers who passed away, unfortunately, in like a crash. And he was saying that once your mind is like, you're scared and you're not going like full tilt into the corners and all those things, you have to call it quits. You're just not competitive anymore. And I found that happened to me in snowboarding. That last season, I started making excuses. Like I didn't want to try this new trick because I was like, I could really hurt myself. Then I can't do my business and I can't do my training. And as I started making those excuses, I realized that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be an excuse type person. So it started making me into this person I really didn't want to be. And that's what kind of drove the decision, was realizing, hey, if I'm having this fear and I know, I'm working so hard to fight it off because I need to perform, but I just don't want to push myself that much anymore. It's just probably the end of my road in that sport. And there's other things that I could keep going for, especially if, like you said, if you keep pushing for so long, all of a sudden you're like 30 and you're retiring and you might not have as many years to build, your business or different things. And so I feel fortunate that I did quit when I did before I had like some really, really scary injury, because it's kind of only a matter of time when those things happen, and that I was able to transition into other things and still be young when I transitioned.
Yeah, good for you for being able to do that, especially, you're 26 now, so I assume 22, 23, you make that choice back in 2015, 16. Evan McEachran, who was on the podcast, he was the 27th episode. I don't know if you're familiar with the name, but he's a big air contestant. He competed in those 2018 Olympic Games, and he said the same thing as far as the sport of snowboarding, big air. The injuries, it's not when they happen, it's not if they happen, it's when they happen. Sorry, and it's you're fortunate enough that you have other things where you're able to pursue and put your mind to. It's exciting, and now in 2018 you were ranked 105th in Canada for CrossFit as females. What's the goal for that right now, or is that on the back burner as you're trying to emulate Juju?
I got really into CrossFit, and 2018 was definitely a good season for me in CrossFit. I think they take top 20 or 30 to regionals, and I was close in a lot of the workouts, and then I'm really bad at handstand walking. I had so many shoulder injuries from snowboarding. People always say CrossFit's bad for your shoulders. I'm like, actually, it's from crashing on my shoulders snowboarding. That's where all those injuries come from. So like my handstand push-ups, my handstand walks, those things are all just not great. And so one of those workouts happened and I came, I don't know, like 800th or something, and it just put me back. But that year was a really good year, actually. I think it was probably the first year in my life since I was 12 that I wasn't in pain, because I've been in pain and had some sort of injury all my life. Like with snowboarding, you're just always, you have something, your ankle, your shoulder, your head, like there's always something. So that was actually a really, really good year of training. And then last year I ended up going to London for a CrossFit sanctional competition. I competed on a team and I competed individual in Asia. I went to Shanghai, and that was really, really cool. And then I was in Bali for a month, and a cat ran in front of my motorbike and I crashed and hurt my shoulder, and it's been bugging me the whole year. So last year I took kind of a mental break from training. One was because my shoulder anyway, so it was like a perfect time. And I'd just been go like my whole life with training, and I never really took time. away
Right.
from sport. So I did take that time and I just like, pushed really, really hard on my business, which it was another lesson of burnout there on that side of things. And yeah, now I'm just trying with this year, especially with the quarantine and everything, trying to merge everything kind of coming full circle and bringing things together with both the athlete marketing side, my business side, and then getting back to training and then also creating content around the training. So yeah, right now I'm enjoying switching up my training and trying to train a little bit more like a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah.
So still doing CrossFit workouts. I was just at my friend's gym and doing a CrossFit workout, but also incorporating some running and sprinting because I felt really humbled by the wide receiver juju training last week. I felt super slow and I was always someone who's very fast and very explosive. So I was like watching, I was like, I don't look that fast and explosive. I don't like that. So yeah, so I'm just enjoying that for now because I mean, we don't even have a competition season set out right now with the whole quarantine. So yeah, there's no point for me to push through some injury and try to like, compete in a few months and still be injured. I might as well just take my time. I'm going to get some MRIs on my shoulders just to see how they are and if there's anything that needs to be done, keep rehabbing them because they are improving, but slowly. And then see if there's a competition that comes up that I want to do. But yeah, trying to find that balance in my life because even though I did retire from snowboarding, I really did just jump straight into another sport. So.
Yeah, and now obviously you're doing well in it. How are you trying to balance the fact that you have so many things on the go? I say this because I'm familiar with trying to balance a full-time job and having your own podcast and trying to train as much as you possibly can so that you stay in shape so that when things do get back to normal, quote unquote normal, air quotes, after COVID-19, whatever happens here. But are you dealing as far as your time management? How are you balancing that? Are you, spending time in the evenings? Do you take mental breaks on weekends? What's that schedule and time breakdown look like?
Yeah, so working in social media, it's like nonstop because you kind of have to be on all the time because social media doesn't sleep. So that's been interesting. Last year, at the start of the year, I guess pretty much the spring when I went to the UK for a competition in February, and then it was April, I believe, that I went to Asia. And between that, I burnt completely out. I had, a few really big clients and then my other clients with different projects going, and everything was like so many projects at once. And I was like, you know what, I want to like, crush my business and crush training. And unfortunately, I realized that that's just not possible. I actually ended up going to the doctor having like dizzy spells. I couldn't drive myself. And it was because I was just super low on blood sugar from one, stress, but two, like I wasn't eating frequently enough. I would be like, I'd come back from training and know I had all this client work to do and hop straight on my laptop and like forgot lunch. And then at the end of the day, I'd always like, because I had a nutrition coach, I was trying to make up my macros. So I was like eating everything. So I was definitely still eating enough at the end of the day, but yeah, my doctor told me that I have super low blood sugar and have to keep eating like frequently, which is, I'm like, that's no problem. I'll start doing that. But yeah, so that really kind of like gave me a big wake up call. So then I did that trip to Bali after Asia, and that gave me some time to like reflect because there's a 12-hour time difference there. So I was lucky to, most of my clients and their accounts and things are sleeping. So I was like, okay, perfect. Like in the day I can try to be present. And I found it was still really difficult. And so I was like, when I come back, I need to make some changes. And so, that's why I did take some of the break off training because I knew at this point in my life, like just financially and different things that like I want to really spend this year with my head down and crushing my business. With the shoulder injury, it gave me a chance to do that. And so that's what I did. I had a talk with my coach. And so I started just doing my own thing for the rest of the year because we discussed that like you can't try to be the CrossFit Games champion and like Mark Zuckerberg at the same time. Like it's just not possible. And it's funny because in my head, I'm like, anything is possible. I could do that. And it's just, no, it's just, you really can't. You have to have your priorities. And one of those things has to take precedent, or you have to be okay with being like, I could be a mediocre athlete, have fun going to these competitions, but not win and still do my business. And so that's some things I'm coming to terms with. Can I just keep training for fun, put out content, go to these competitions when I do want to and do well, but know that I'm just like never going to go to the CrossFit Games and do well in my business? Or do I like quit everything and just spend like 2-3 years training and go to the CrossFit Games? Because realistically, that's what it takes. And so that's been something that I've come to terms with and trying to build out a schedule and a routine and just get back to doing what makes me happy and picking what makes me happy in the day, and not, feeling forced that I owe it to anybody to make it to the CrossFit Games, or I owe it to anybody to build $1 million business. Like, I can choose what I want to do. And yeah, so I'm trying to manage my time, still figuring it out. But this whole quarantine actually has been amazing for that, because I think everything's been on pause and we can just like look and reflect on what we want to do. And for me, that started like pumping out tons of content, because I love doing that. And so I was really happy to get back to that, because I had put a lot of different personal projects on hold for the sake of my business and for my training. And now I'm just like at a place where I'm like, okay, what do I want to do moving forward with these opportunities that I've created from the content that I've been working on?
It's amazing hearing this stuff from someone else, because I feel like I'm going through a very similar experience, and quarantine was such a blessing. With the Athletes Podcast, we were able to start putting out more content. We had 3-4 months where it was downtime, still getting paid from a full-time job and not having to actually go into work. Like, all of these things, it was a perfect storm. It was so nice. And, there's so much pressure on people. I shouldn't say people like us. There's so much pressure on our generation to try and be amazing and to do these amazing things in our early 20s. And we have such high expectations for ourselves too, because we have guys like Gary Vee saying, go get after it, go do it. There's no excuse. You can do it now. Whether you're 13, 23, 33, it doesn't matter. And, it's tough when you have to, sometimes you got to take a step back and recognize where you're at and what you've done over the past 10 years. Because to your point, now at 26, you've got a podcast, you've got an agency, you've got all of these training videos. Like, you're doing amazing things. And sometimes we lose sight of the fact that it's, we're still supposed to be enjoying life and being present, like you said. So how was Bali?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that traveling experience.
I love it. So actually, like, when I retired from snowboarding, I went through like a really, really low period with my mental health. And actually, I always wanted to go to Bali because my aunt had been there. And then also, like, in snowboarding, it's like there's a huge surf scene in Bali. So a lot of people I knew from surfing, snowboarding, skateboarding all had like gone there, because it's kind of a big hub for everything: surfing, meditation, yoga, like good food, adventure. Like, it's something for everyone. Yeah, it's just so amazing. And so I actually went for a month by myself that year that I retired from snowboarding. I just was like, I'm spending all my money and going to Bali for a month. And and so I went, and just like, it was kind of like a self-discovery trip. I made some good friends at the gym and different places there, but most of the time I just spent by myself. I would take my motorbike and go rip into the rainforest and find a waterfall and rip back. And people on the island actually started knowing me, not by my name, but as like the girl who was doing everything.
Nice.
Because most people there, they would say, like, girls would come with their boyfriends and they would only do stuff that their boyfriend was doing. Or if they came by themselves, they would just sit like in their room. And so actually, even a coach from one of the gyms, she was new there and she hadn't been going out or doing many things. And the owners of the gym told me, like, you can stay at our place, but like take her somewhere every day, like on a different adventure. I'm like, okay. And so
the sun was just on cloud 9.
Yeah, I was like, let's go to the beach. We had different places we would go every single day. And it's like every day was an epic adventure. And it was a lot of like self-healing and self-work that I did there. That was really amazing. And so then when I was telling my boyfriend about how cool a place it was, he's like, we have to go. And I was like, okay, yeah, like we'll go sometime. And he's like, no, we have to. And he's like done hardly any traveling. And then meanwhile, I've done tons with sport and different things. And so, yeah, he's like, okay, no, we really, really got to go. So I was like, okay, let me think. And so then all of a sudden, this opportunity to go to this sanctional event for CrossFit in Asia. It was the Asia CrossFit Championships, and there were some really big athletes going. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do the qualifiers. And I ended up qualifying, and we're like, all right, so if we go there, then we can do our whole trip to Bali. And it was around the same time that we wanted to go to Bali anyways. So it worked out perfect. We spent like 10 days in Shanghai, finished the competition. The day the competition ended, we flew out and went to Bali for 4 weeks. And it was really amazing, other than the almost hitting the cat on the road. But other than that, It was really awesome.
Come on, you got to come back with one story, right?
Yeah, that was a crazy one for sure. At least I saved the cat, but I was going like 60K and flipped off my bike. So,
oh dear. Well, so, and no injuries from that then?
Just the shoulder. Yeah. Like, luckily,
wow.
I mean, and also I think I had PTSD the rest of the trip about driving. I was actually like, every time I would drive and go around a corner, I would just picture like something's going to run across the road. My parents were telling me, like, you see a small thing, you have to keep going straight. It's just dangerous to maneuver away. But the locals told me that there's actually like a superstitious thing. If you hit a cat, you have to hand bury it. And I was like, I think actually if I ran over a cat and killed it, that would be more traumatic to me than me like falling off the bike and just hurting my shoulder. So I was okay with it after I heard that.
Well, you know what Netflix says? Don't fuck with cats. So,
No, don't.
Have you watched that series?
I haven't, but I've heard about it.
2 episodes in, it's dicey. I don't recommend it, but I have to watch the third now. So
that's like, I've been watching the Epstein documentary and I like stopped halfway through. I was like, this is so disturbing.
Yeah, that's another one I have to get on. It's on my list when I have spare time. So tell me about CrossFit then. Is your plan then okay, let's actually ask this. You mentioned being Mark Zuckerberg as well as being a CrossFit Games champion. If you could choose one or the other, what would it be and why?
Oof. I think probably I would choose CrossFit Games champion, because from there you've built like this big platform as an athlete. You can transition over to a lot of things. And that was actually something like I always thought, like growing up, I think I was aware during the time. I always was someone who played movies back in my head. And I was like, every time I was struggling for something or working on something, I'm like, this will be in like my sports documentary someday. If I win the Olympics, like we're going to look back on this and it'd be a cool story of like this hard thing that happened or whatever it was. And so then actually, like, I didn't hop on any podcasts or anything after I retired from snowboarding for a few years. It hasn't really been till this year that I've started sharing more of my story. And I think a lot of that came from that I thought I need to be an Olympic champion to have an autobiography or to start this new thing based on my athlete brand or all these different things. I really like pictured in my head, I was like, I need to be the best in the world, and then I can transition over to these other things I'm passionate about, whether it's, making videos and using my platform to go there, or speaking or starting a business. And so that was something that's hard to come to terms with, but now I realize that you don't have to be an Olympic champion to motivate and inspire people or to tell your story. Like, your story is worth telling it just because it can help other people. It doesn't matter if you're not the best in the world. There's only a very few people that are, and they have different stories that might not relate to everybody. So I think, everyone's story is important. And so that's why I would pick, it's a long-winded answer to why I pick probably the CrossFit Games champion, because once you do have that platform and impact, you can go over and take, say, your prize winnings and start the business you want to, or, use your impact in different ways. And I'm an athlete through and through. So I would definitely pick being the champion in that, especially that it does come with a lot of prize money too. So you can mix it into the starting the business. But I think, like, you start a business and you're the Mark Zuckerberg, like, you're probably not going to be that healthy or fit because you don't have any time to do those things. It's so stressful. Like, I knew I was like, I want to have a really big business, but when I do think about the role of CEO at very traditional companies, I'm like, that stress every day, not having a family life and just all those things, it's just like, it's not for me. I made so many sacrifices as an athlete with friends and family and different things that I'm like, the purpose of life isn't just to work and die. Like, we have to live and enjoy each day. And not saying that being like a Mark Zuckerberg is not the way. He makes his impact on the world in different ways, but I think there's ways to do that without having to be like a $1 trillion business CEO. I think you can be a little bit smaller than that and still make a really big impact.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm going through the same thing right now as far as trying to add legitimacy to the Athletes podcast and where we're at. And, it's funny because you started creating this content of training like these athletes. And one of the things I'm starting to do with the podcast here is actually go and work out with the athletes that I'm interviewing on the podcast. So for instance, I'm going next week, actually, I'm doing a workout with Tyler Johnson, who's a pro bodybuilder. I'm not gonna be able to move afterwards, but those kind of things that are, yeah, I know. We'll find out how that goes. I'll give you an update on the next episode, but for instance, next time up in Ottawa, I'm definitely going to be reaching out and letting you know we got to put together a video. And that's the kind of area where I think people enjoy that, being able to really connect with someone on that level. When you're talking about a podcast, you're saying you wanted to be an Olympic champion, and obviously it would be an amazing opportunity to be an Olympic champion. But you still got to one of the highest levels of snowboarding out there. And you have that story that you're able to tell. I'm a freaking 7 handicap golfer. I played high school sports, and who the heck is David Stark to be talking with all these amazing athletes? So that's where I'm going to start doing these projects to start adding legitimacy. And so I'm taking a lot of inspiration from what you're doing, and I give complete kudos to you because you're training and you're doing all of these amazing things. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you continue to put out, and because it's amazing content too. Do you have a background in that, or is this all self-taught knowledge that you've been able to do?
Yeah, well, like I did study like business and marketing in school, so like the social media strategy side and like the strategy behind content is something I'm pretty familiar with, especially like even just doing it for my clients. But yeah, when it comes to like actually videoing and photos, I've actually done like photo work for some high profile brands and stuff, which I'm always like, how, why? Because they actually have legit photographers, and that's like me with my camera that's like 30% of the price of their camera, and the lens it's
You're
like
turning your iPhone
10%.
on to 4K.
Well, not the iPhone. I got a camera, but yeah. But yeah, like it's so funny because I'm like, how, like, why is my photo the main page of their website? Like, how is this happening? And yeah, I've always been into like, that's my creative space. Like, I cannot draw. I cannot draw at all. I can't sing. I can't do anything. And so growing up, like, I would just try to like make things with video and photos, and I love just like taking photography around the house, different things. I was always into like capturing the moment, and then also videoing. And even my brother and I, we used to bike around the neighborhood and do like little tricks, but we would like talk as if we were like, I wish YouTube or TikTok were around then, because I think like we would have crushed it, because we used to be like, don't try this at home, kids, and do these tricks, but like we pretend that we were making these videos even though we weren't even filming. And yeah, I was always into like that whole space, always filming things. I took like my parents' like VHS video camera when I went to my first trip to Whistler, and like filmed some stuff and made like a little home video. And then just like snowboarding and skateboarding and all that scene is very video heavy. Like everyone's always pumping out edits every day and different things. So that's another place that it came from. Like my friends and I would make videos, and I was the one who would film and edit them. Usually just because I was the one with like the GoPro or the camera or something, but I was the one who was like pushing all that kind of stuff. And so now that I've gotten back into it, and yeah, it was just kind of from doing it. I would definitely not say I'm a professional any means. So like when I do want to create this series, I really have this image of like going out and training with different pro athletes when like maybe in a year or two when this quarantine is over and it's safe to do so. I really want to do that, but I know like it would not be me filming and stuff. Like I would have like 2 filmers, of audio and editor, all these different things, like a production crew, and then I'm the person interviewing and doing the training and all those things, because I know like I'm filming my own basically, or getting my boyfriend to film, or different things like the video with Juju, and I'm editing it, but I'm like, I'm not putting in fancy transitions and, you know, spending 20 hours on the production. It's just not possible, nor do I have the budget to do so.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like pumping it out and enjoying it though. Like I love like editing, but I'm not a pro at it. And I love taking photos, but also I'm not a pro at it. But I just enjoy doing it. So I love pumping it out like that. But for sure, someday I'll have a production crew or something that, whatever my vision and ideas, they can make it happen 10 times better than I can.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you know, it comes with time too, right? And that's the other thing you mentioned, you know, 10 years ago, you're creating those videos that would have been TikTok famous nowadays. And one of the things that stood out on your website, which is amazing, by the way, is it just natalieallport.com? Is that?
Yeah.
Nice. We'll give that a shout out there. Get the Athletes
Awesome.
Podcast listeners.
Thank you.
But you went to entrepreneurship camp, and you were working at gas stations, making breakfast sandwiches. Like, talk a bit about that story, and maybe how that work ethic as a youth sort of was able to progress you to now working 24/7 and having that go mentality.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, that entrepreneurship camp was so funny because my parents were like not camp people. We have like this really old, it's like 80-some-year-old old family log cabin. It's a cottage, but you say cottage, everyone thinks it's a lake house, especially where it is. There's a lot of large places, but it's not. Like we had a double bunk bed. My brother and I on the top, my mom and my dad on the bottom, and my grandparents in the other room. And the rooms are not even like fully separated. Like it's small, but the property is awesome. And like, so we were very blessed to like go there and go tubing all summer and play sports all summer. My brother and I would make up sports all day and like play completely all day. But yeah, like we would go there and create content and different things and just do stuff there. And then, yeah, getting into all these jobs to try to pay for everything and pay for all these different things. My parents were very much like all about work ethic. That was really important to them, especially being, I think, one, like we had all these big goals that were going to cost a lot, and they were like, well, how are you going to pay for it? Like, you have to pay for it. You want this new equipment, you have to do this. Like all my snowboards I bought myself. I took me like 2 years to save up for my first one. Even my first skateboard, I was like 10, and they made me save up for 2 years to buy it. I was like, please, it's like $13. They were like, your 25 cents allowance per month you're gonna save it up. I'm like, what? And it's so crazy. But
Mom,
yeah,
that'll take me 2.5 years.
it did. It was.
Yeah.
I was like, "What the heck? This sucks." But yeah, So I always had to work to pay for everything, and I think that was really important. But also growing up, like I was gifted in school, and they wanted me to skip a grade, and then most sports came naturally. And I think my parents knew that, like with me with so much energy and being like kind of like a kid who pushed back on a lot of things, that it was really important to keep me challenged, because I think life can go a completely different way for someone that everything comes easy to, and you just are like always challenging people and pushing back. And so I think that was really important for keeping me on, like, into sports and doing all those things. Like I actually asked my dad the other day, I said, Dad, why did you put me into sports? He was like, because you had too much energy and you drove us crazy. I thought he was going to give some inspirational answer. He's like, no, like, because you would have literally drove us crazy.
Yeah, Mom, Dad, why didn't you want to homeschool me? Because we got rid of you for 8 hours of the day.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We actually drove across the country once as a family, and they made me bring my skateboard. My grandpa was like, we don't have room for the skateboard. My dad's like, you will bring the skateboard, because
We're
every
gonna
day
tow
they
you
would let me.
behind.
Yeah, they're like, for an hour, they're like, go skateboard, because otherwise I got really annoying in the car. I was like, energy, like I couldn't just sleep or chill. No. So luckily they always knew I had to have these outlets. But yeah, they always made sure that I had like this work ethic, and I had to do these different things. And so that started with getting a job early on. It also started with like challenging me in different sports and ways. Like snowboarding was the one sport that came really difficult. And so so I think it was kind of unique that I did end up choosing it versus the sports that came easy. Like I never went to hockey camp, for example, because we would go to our cottage, and my parents said hockey camp is expensive. And then I would show up at tryouts, and everyone would say, what hockey camp did she go to? She must have been skating all summer. They're like, no, she played baseball. She ran around the cottage. Like, she hasn't skated in 6 months. And everyone was like, mind blown. So yeah, it was really interesting that I did pick kind of like that harder sport that took me so long to learn. But I think because I just get annoyed when things and I'm not good at things. I like have to figure it out. If I'm not good at something, I just like need to be challenged, which is definitely something my parents instilled. And then yeah, with snowboarding, a lot of my teammates, their parents were paying for things, or you definitely have to have money in that sport. That's just kind of the way it goes. Skiing, snowboarding, all those things. And so coming from somewhere where I didn't have all the same opportunities, yeah, I worked really hard. I graduated high school a semester early so that I could work at that gas station, like 5 a.m. till noon, just making breakfast sandwiches. Luckily, like I got to eat all of them, and I just make like double bacon breakfast sandwiches nonstop, which was like the benefit. But yeah, I worked there, and then one summer I worked as a janitor at a car dealership, and just got yelled at by all the older people who were mad because the person who hired me, they let me go for the summer for like a month to go train in Whistler, and they were all super mad because I was like a new hire, and then somehow I got this like extra privilege, and so they all hated me and they all bullied me, and yeah, there's a lot of drama. Someone used to actually like take the toilet paper and take it out of the bathroom and tell the manager that I didn't restock the toilet paper, and I was like, I literally just put the toilet paper. Or like they're like, oh, the bathroom's dirty, and I went in, did nothing, walked out because I had just cleaned it, and they're like, oh, it looks so much better. I was like, I didn't do anything. I just so there's a lot of drama in those different things. But yeah, like, so anyways, routing back to the whole work ethic, I think it's just from having to be in those situations. And even in my agency, like a lot of the people that I early on try to hire, I was like, have you worked customer service and been yelled at? Because I think that's so important, because even on social media, if you're managing someone's social media and they're getting like these weird comments and people just being annoying, like you have to be very courteous and kind. The same with any set or client relations. So I always try to like work with people who've had those shitty jobs or those experiences, because I do think it makes you like into a different person. Like it definitely builds this work ethic and this like just a mentality of like be nice to people.
For sure. My full-time job is at the Buffalo Canoe Club, which is a private sailing yacht club in Fort Erie, Ontario. And oh my gosh, do you deal with some characters in the private club industry. And it's,
Most likely people who have never had those type of jobs.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So and it's ultimately, it's, you're servicing people, right? And you're providing the
Yeah.
service and trying to create the ultimate club member experience. But there are times when you got to be able to face adversity and, not take their head off after they chew you out. Right. And I think as an athlete, that's something that's learned and gained. Over time, you face adversity, whether you're down a point at the end of the game, whether you need to land a big trick in a snowboarding event, whatever it is. We have that ability as athletes to really rise to the top. And, like they said, cream rises to the top. And hopefully that's what you can gain through sport. And I think that's one of the benefits of playing sport in your youth. Was that was hockey and snowboarding your two main ones? I know you've got the next video of training like Tiger Woods coming out next week, but what other sports are you into? Like, are you trying to balance it out and be a multi-sport athlete everywhere?
So growing up, that was part of my goal. Like my goal was to play on every single school sports team. And so in elementary school, I did make that happen. And then I was really upset because I didn't win athlete of the year in my school. I really wanted to in grade 8. And this girl who was just into running, she strictly played running. I think she did basketball too, but she won. And I was like, I was so mad. That made me so upset. I think that like drove me for all my competitiveness after that. Because I was like, what the heck? I purposely did every single sports team so that I would win this damn award. But growing up, I tried to play every sport that I could because I just loved it. Like I loved gym class. I loved even the fitness testing, the beep test. Like I just like being challenged in that way. And I think also like when you're a kid, you pretty much gravitate to things that you're naturally good at. And so that was like a way that I kind of stood out. I felt, as a female athlete, also you're like very different. But when you are playing the sport, like you get that hate and the different comments off the field. But when you're playing the sport, you're like in the zone, and it's like that's your thing. And like I would like beat the boys because they hadn't gone through puberty yet, and so that was always fun. Like I remember I showed up at school and all the boys said we're starting baseball, and I'm like okay, I'm gonna go start baseball. They're like no, our season already started, and I'm like. Went home, told my dad I want to start baseball. He called the league person and they said, yeah, we could take another person on. So the next day I show up at baseball. They're like, what the hell? Like, no, girls can't play baseball. I'm like, no, I'm going to play baseball.
Started hitting dingers. You're all done.
Yeah, so I did play baseball actually fairly competitively. I was a pitcher and a catcher, which my dad told me first game, do not be those positions, play the outfield. And then he was gone on a business trip and he came back and he's like, what positions do you play? I'm like, pitcher. I pitched a 13 pitch inning. He's like, what? He's like, and catcher and first base. He's like, oh my God, what the hell?
That's the number one rule of parenting. Don't tell them what not to do because that's what they're going to do.
That's exactly. And so I got really into baseball, and actually they ended up, there's no women's baseball teams, like there was only softball near me, but my dad heard that there was the Ontario Summer Games were coming to Ottawa, and there's a league in Toronto for women's baseball. And so we said, what if we can put together an Ottawa team, get enough girls together and enter this? And so we ended up like driving all the way to Toronto, get his coaching certification for baseball so that he could put together this program. And we ended up winning the Ontario, I say Olympic, but Ontario Summer Games Championship, which is so super cool. Like you're like 13, you get to stay at the dorms at the university and be part of the opening ceremonies and everything. And we ended up winning, and I was supposed to play on Team Ontario, but it was like you'd have to drive all the way down to Toronto every weekend. So I haven't picked up a baseball since, other than I actually just had to buy a baseball glove because I lost mine and I want to do a day in the life of a baseball player. So that's like something else that I'm going to work on. I'm thinking about Mike Trout because then I can hit. But I was a pitcher before, so I'm not sure. But my shoulder, I'm not sure if it would hold up to pitching anymore.
Yeah, but, you might have to be ambidextrous.
Yeah, so we'll see. Actually, there was a girl at the field, and she was just like 13. She was coming up in baseball. She never played, and her season got canceled with everything. I think they might be back on now. But and my dad made me pitch for her. He's like, oh, my daughter used to play. He started hyping me up, and I was like, I haven't touched a baseball in like 13 years, don't make me. And I pitched for her, and I was like just trying not to hit her with the ball. I was like, oh my gosh. And so actually that's been what's driven me to do some of these series too, is like I don't like to feel like I went and picked up a ball and couldn't pitch how I used to. I don't like that. So I was like, I need to get back into doing all these sports and get back to at least where I was, because I just like that feeling. Like I like to show up, someone invites me for a baseball tournament and I'm going to do well and not just like as if I hadn't played in 13 years, and same thing with sprinting and all those things. So we'll see how it crosses over into my CrossFit training.
Yeah, well, and it's nice also testing yourself too. I think pushing our bodies to the limits is so important, not only just as athletes or, through a podcast, but a lot of people live sedentary lives that don't necessarily move as much as they should and as we're built to. So it's important to do those things and get out there because, when you do snowboarding for 10 years, your body gets used to it. Your body has the same movements every single day in, day out. And it puts a lot of wear and tear on your body. So it's good to change up your training and modes. You touched on being a female athlete, and I want to get into kind of what that adversity is like. And, you talk about how guys will make little comments or the boys will say that girls can't play baseball. How did you go through that? What is your, mentality on that? And how, are you pushing female athletes through your All In project? And tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So growing up, like my dad, I said, I want to be in the NFL or I want to be in the MLB or NHL. I actually said all of those things. Like
Nice.
Not just
Big
exclusive to one.
hey?
I said all of those things. And he said,
easy there,
okay.
MJ.
Yeah. But he told me, he's like, okay, you can do it. And like, I grew up, my mom, like when I was in the bath as a kid, would read me the book from Tiger Woods' dad. Like that was a book that she would always read to me. She actually used to buy she bought like 20 copies and gave for like 2 years. That was the gift I gave to everyone for their birthdays. So like I go to like these girls' birthday parties, and everyone like they're giving Barbies, and I'm like, here's Tiger Woods' dad's book on his training. But yeah, like
you should play golf.
yeah, but they're always telling me like all these inspirational sports movies. Like my parents early on really recognized like what I wanted to do and try to, help me in any way, whether it's through inspiring stories and just, reading those books to me and things like that. And so, yeah, so they got into that, reading all those different things. And so, yeah, I never really believed that I couldn't. I was like, in my head, I was like, yeah, I'll be the first person, female in the MLB. Yeah, I'll be the first girl in the in football. Like I honestly, I thought those things as a kid. Like I was definitely someone who was very confident, and I was thanks to my parents because they really sheltered me from the real world truth that there's a reason there isn't any girls there right now. There is like this stigma against, girls being into sports. There is these differences. And so for a lot of my childhood, I was really kind of lucky and sheltered in the fact that my parents really supported what I did. They didn't tell me that I couldn't do anything. And so even if I did get comments at school, I almost like didn't understand why. I was just like, oh, the boys are just mad that I beat them again. So they're saying like I would beat them at the beep test, and they would tell me, well, you started at that one beep early. And I was like, no, I didn't. Like I even started behind the other guy because I wanted to make sure like it was legit. And they would just make up these excuses. I remember like leaving the gym class crying because they told me that I cheated and that's the only way I beat them at the beep test. And that always made me so mad because I was like, no, like it just is that I like love doing the beep test. I'm fit and I work hard. Like what the heck? And so yeah, they used to get those comments. And then same thing, like I would want to play basketball with all the boys at recess, and I would get picked last all the time. And I was like, no, like I'm actually good. Like please put me in. They're like, no, you're a girl. Like we're not picking you. Or this one girl would play who's not even into sports, but because the boys had a crush on her, they would always pick her first so that she would go out with them. And I'm like, I was like such a tomboy girl. Like no guys had any interest in me back then. I was just like wearing my basketball jerseys to school, like, and
boys are the worst, eh? We're just filled with testosterone.
Young boys are the worst. Yeah. It's crazy because I posted on TikTok like a month or so ago this video, and I woke up to like 5,000 comments from teen boys saying girls can't play sports. Like they were so bad. And I remembered like, and what I felt bad was like, I'm 26, like I can take it. I don't care. Like you're 13. Like, I'm sorry. You didn't play pro sports and you're being just stupid. But the girls in the comments who were like, my video was just saying like, I wish that there were opportunities for girls to believe like growing up they could play a pro sport, because some of the issues with the reason why things aren't maybe at a higher level or girls aren't as interested in watching or playing sports is because you get to high school and you all of a sudden have to pick what you're going to major in university. Well, if there's no opportunity for you to be professional in the sport, to make ends meet, to make anything work, of course you're going to drop sports because sports are looked at as a hobby. You have to focus on your academics or whatever else you're going to do. So that's why so many girls quit. And then also the peer pressure of conforming to, getting into other things. Maybe it's like getting into makeup, and that's against being into sports, which I don't think is true either, because there's a lot of great female athletes who are super into fashion and makeup and different things. People can be multifaceted, but also then the pressure that they get from boys who say, you know, your sport isn't legit. It's a female sport, so it's not real. You could never hang out with us because we're better, and all these different stupid comments that people get. And so I do think it starts at the top from getting like those leagues and different things going, because, you know, as much as like, so I woke up to all these comments and these guys were saying, well, you must not know any business. And I was like, you were 12 and I've gone to business school, but okay. And they're like, must not know anything about business if you're saying, you know, that females should have these opportunities or different things. And I was like, trust me, I know the numbers, but like we see Kevin Durant, who just partnered on starting a new sport league, and they're starting with volleyball and softball, but he has the money to make it happen, and he doesn't necessarily care if it's profitable at first. Like anyone who started any sport from scratch is probably not profitable at first, or it started from a very small place of someone having the dream and investing in it. And if we invest in it, and little girls can grow up and say, oh my God, I can do this as a full-time career. I can be a professional athlete. I know it's like only 1% or 0.5% of the population would ever possibly do that, but they can still look at that as a possible way to make money and live life and do what they love. Then more people are going to stick with sports, and that culture it'll take decades and it'll take generations to build, but it has to start somewhere. And I think we are getting some of those opportunities we see with like the hockey leagues that are coming in for women. I think those leagues still, they pay people like $500. They're still not really feasible. They all have to have full-time jobs and everything. So, I mean, obviously still work there, but the pro women's soccer league that's coming, these other leagues that are starting up, women being even like the women's world, US women's national team sold out way more merch than the U.S. men's team. They had more viewership and more money brought in. Specifically, like I got into this argument with people on TikTok, and it was so stupid because they were like, men's World Cup has more viewers. I'm like, I'm talking about U.S. women's soccer team versus the men's U.S. soccer team. The U.S. women's get paid much less, but they actually brought in more to U.S. soccer than the men's team. I know obviously in the FIFA World Cup, the men's have way more viewership in total, but the U.S. women's soccer team in comparison has more. So we do see those people being brought to the forefront. I think it also, like 4% of sports media covers female athletes. And even though it's almost close to 50% of females that do play sports in general, but then obviously we know that a lot of fall off in high school. I think it's like some crazy stat that it's like 2 and 3, or I don't even know, that quit.
Maybe Jordan can find it.
Yeah, it makes me really, really, really bummed out. There was some stat, I think the Gist posted it like a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh, this is so sad. So yeah, I'm trying to do a lot more there, because my experience growing up was, people in my school told me, you suck at snowboarding right now, you'll never make it. And so I was like, I'm going to work really hard and make it. But I got a lot of that judgment for having these dreams. And I think that also goes across male and female. Like my main mission, apart from pushing, I want to push women's sports forward. That's really important to me. And that's, even this last year, I've realized how important that is. I always, I think that females get pitted in competition against each other. Like we say, well, there's already a sports league, you can be a pro snowboarder, so who cares about the other sports? Like, it's like, well, that's not fair. Like, we need more seats at the table, not just fighting for the same ones. It's like telling someone growing up, well, you can be a pro if you're a snowboarder, but if you play volleyball, this, there's no opportunities for you. So I'm like, that's not fair either. I think women need opportunities across the same amount of sports that men do. It just, there's a lot of business things and marketing things that drive how we can actually make that happen. I think there's solutions being put forward, and I want to do more about it, other than I'm trying to feature more female athletes and talk about it in my podcast when I do have female athletes on, about their unique experiences. But I think there's definitely more to do. And that's a big part of my platform, is like, I want to build this platform larger so that I can then go and help more female athletes and more different things, whether it's inspiring them by being a female athlete who's going to go out and train with these pro athletes or do the pro athlete training and showing that, women can be athletic and strong and different things like that. Or it's also, making my business successful. So financially I can start something that can help female athletes and things like that. But at the same time, I think, also celebrating effort in both males and females, and not stereotyping people into specific things. Like, men play sports. Like, I know a lot of men who aren't into sports, and they felt similar judgment because they weren't into it. And then the same thing with girls for being into sports. They got the same judgment as those guys, which is unfortunate. And then I think me saying that I wanted to be a pro snowboarder as a female, it was especially harsh, but also it was if some guy in my class had said, I'm going to be a pro snowboarder, a lot of the guys would have ragged on them too. And I don't think that's cool either. I think, it's the people who do put themselves out there who actually go and make it happen, versus everyone is like trying to conform and think that it's like cool not to care. That doesn't get anyone anywhere. And so that's something that I wish could change, because I think that would also help with the whole perspective on female athletes as well. But especially just with all teenagers, I think it's really, really tough time for all of them. So even just seeing those teen boys making those comments, I'm like, I understand. Like, they have all this pressure from their other teen boys, and that's what they're seeing from these other teen boys who are acting like that, who they want to be like or be friends with. So they're repeating it. And so it's like, it's just a tough time, I think, for most people.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Well, and to your
totally.
point,
because I have a lot of, continue. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I have a lot of pro male athlete friends, and they all are big advocates and supporters for females in sports. And you even see, like, the late Kobe Bryant was really big for pushing that with his daughter and everything. And it's like, those are the guys that you teens are looking up to and saying are awesome, yet you want to act like that one, like, asshole guy in your class, instead of, these are the athletes who are actually telling you to push forward women's sports and to push these things forward and doing something. And so there's not many male pro athletes that I know anymore of that are really anti-women's sports. Actually, a lot of them are active about it and helping with it. I actually had one of my friends who was a former pro baseball player who commented on one of those posts, and then he got all these teen boys were hating on him. And I'm like, I'm so sorry that all these boys just started hating on you for supporting female sports. It's like, none of these guys are going to play pro sports, and yet they're hating on this pro athlete who is supporting it. It just blows my mind, but such is life.
Yeah, it's a shame. But you know what, I think, like you said, to your point, it starts from the top, and it is a slow process. Obviously, we're nowhere near being a 50-50 equal, but we're on our way, and we need people like you doing what you're doing, showcasing what females are able to do and accomplish, both in the business and athletic world. And it's a slow but sure process. And, like they say, that the tortoise wins the race long term, right? And it's a waiting game. Unfortunately, we have females who have to go through that and deal with that adversity, but it makes them pretty damn strong women like yourself, right? And at the end of the day, hopefully it will be one day that we're able to see the WNBA and the NBA showcased at the same time. And there's pro sports for females and males. It's funny, you talk about the National Women's Hockey League starting up. The second episode featured Meg DeLay of the Athletes Podcast, and she made $5,000 for the entire season, which was like what, 1/100th of 1 month of what Connor McDavid makes in his season, right? Like, just a nominal number. And that's what she's making for her entire season.
It's the same in WNBA. It's insane. Like, it's like the average salary is maybe $75K. A lot are making $55K, and then there's hundreds of millions for the men, which, I mean, I know they don't bring in a lot of the dollars right now, but and I am proud that the WNBA, at least they're like making a living wage so that they can live, versus like, how are you expected to be this top level pro athlete if you have to go and work all day? Like, it just, versus the other athletes who can train all day and make that their living. It doesn't facilitate improvement of the sport and progression over a shorter time. It's going to take us much longer to raise the level of games if you're having to work full time while you're playing, versus men are able to play full time because they're making hundreds of millions versus $5,000. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but it's, what, hopefully we can see that in our lifetime change, and I'm looking forward to it. It's because, it's improving slowly but surely. Natalie, one of the last questions we ask people on the podcast is, what tips and tricks, pieces of advice would you give to that younger generation? Having lived through it as a national team athlete, what would you give to that younger generation as far as how they can strive to be the best athlete that they can be?
Yeah, I think ignore the judgment. Like, even when you reach the top level, there's still going to be judgment about different things, whether it's like, oh, you're not wearing the latest jacket, or why are you spending so much time in the gym? Like, let's go party. Like, there's so many different, judgment comes from different directions, and know that it's going to happen, because I think that's just human nature. Hopefully that improves, but you need to be able to tune it out and know that long term, like, sticking to what you're passionate about, being authentic to yourself and making those decisions for you, and not to like conform to what people say is cool at the time, it's always going to pay off. Like I'm at a point in my life where it's like I feel so much more comfortable of like telling my story and not being afraid to be passionate about what I'm doing and put myself out there, whether I fail, whether my video sucks, whether it flops. Like I don't care anymore, and that's such a good feeling to get to. And I think it's important for athletes to just like, you got to tune that out, because I know it's hard, especially when you're young, from your classmates who are saying, hey, like hang out with us and you want to go train, or you know, you're being pressured in so many different directions on the other side too, with your parents, different things. Just like, just hold true to what you want to do, and it's going to pay off if you put in the work and you're passionate, and you don't like hold things back because you're worried about what people will think, because you're always going to regret that. That will always be something you'll regret. But if you just go for it, and even if you fail, you're not going to regret it. But yeah, if you conform to judgment and things like that, that's probably something you're going to regret. But I know it's hard in the moment.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's, if more people can embrace that, that mindset, that we're going to have some amazing athletes coming in moving forward in the future.
Yeah, I
Natalie,
hope so.
Thank you very much for coming on the Athletes Podcast. Where can people find you on social media? And you know what, throw everything out there, podcast, Insta, Twitter, where's everyone finding you?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably my main platform, and I'm at Natalie Allport on Instagram, but I'm at Natalie Allport on like every single social media platform. So
Nice, you got in there early, hey?
Yeah, you can find me anywhere with that name. You can Google search me. I will come up with that name too. I think I saw the other day there was like a girl from the UK who rides horses who also has my name, but luckily I've got all my articles and stuff up above that. I'm like, no, someone else with my name sneaking in there. I get Google alerts about it sometimes. I'm like, no.
SEO optimization there, hey?
I'm like, no. I take these spots. I'm like, but yeah, Natalie Allport everywhere, natalieallport.com. My podcasts go up at natalieallport.com as well, but All In with Natalie Allport is what you'd want to type in on iTunes, Spotify, wherever, and or just follow on Instagram at the All In Project. All In Podcast was taken, sadly, on Instagram. I didn't get that one fast enough. But yeah, you can just go at the All In Project, and you'll find where I post all the episodes each week, and different quotes and things throughout the week as well.
Amazing. Well, again, Natalie, thank you very much for coming on the Athletes Podcast, and we look forward to seeing what you continue to put out in the future. And hopefully we'll get one video of training with Natalie Allport after you're done getting all these Juju videos posted.
Yeah, awesome. I would love that. And thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, you take care. Will do. And we'll look forward to having you on again.
Awesome.